You know, I still replay that day in my head sometimes, and the sheer audacity of it still sends a chill down my spine. Imagine showing up to your own flesh hand, blood sister's wedding, dressed impeccably, with a gift that cost you 6 months of serious saving, only to find your assigned seat not just at the kiddie table or in the back corner, but literally outside the reception tent, next to the catering trash cans. I mean actual, overflowing, industrial-sized bins. My sister Clara saw the look on my face, this mixture of disbelief and deep, gut-wrenching hurt, and she just offered a cold, satisfied smirk. "Guess you don't count," she mouthed across the room, loud enough for a few people to hear. I just stood there, clutching the heavy, beautifully wrapped box containing a vintage wine decanter set that I knew she desperately wanted. And for one paralyzed second, all I could think was I wrong to take my gift, turn around, and walk out of her life forever? Tell me, honestly, if you would have done the exact same thing, because what happened next shook her perfect little world to its very core, and I don't regret it for a second. The story really begins years before, with the kind of sibling rivalry that always felt more like a full-blown war than just playful teasing. Clara and I are only 2 years apart, but we couldn't be more different. She was always the golden child, beautiful, effortlessly popular, and possessed of this sharp, manipulative charm that she used on my parents like a master puppeteer. I was the quiet, studious one, the one who worked 3 jobs to pay for college and had a knack for fixing things, but rarely got noticed unless I was being compared unfavorably to her. My parents weren't malicious, but they were definitely biased. Everything I achieved was met with a mild nod. Everything Clara did, even the most basic thing like passing a driving test, was an event worthy of a family celebration. The comparison was the constant, dull ache of my childhood. When I graduated at the top of my class with an engineering degree, my dad spent the dinner talking about how Clara was finally thinking about going to community college. I learned early on that my value in the family was conditional and usually dependent on how much I was supporting Clara's latest endeavor. The worst incident, the one that really cemented the dynamic, happened last year. I was saving up for a down payment on a small condo, painstakingly hoarding every extra dollar. Clara had just decided she needed an adventure car for weekend trips, a brand new, expensive SUV. She went to my parents, spun a story about how I didn't really need to buy a place right now, and how she needed the car for her mental health. A week later, my parents borrowed a significant portion of my condo savings, a 4-figure amount, with a flimsy promise to pay it back soon, and Clara was driving around town in her new ride, never once saying thank you. I was devastated, but I swallowed the anger because I thought, she's my sister, family is family. Fast forward 6 months. Clara got engaged to Mark, a genuinely sweet guy who, frankly, was far too good for her, but completely blind to her manipulative streak. The wedding planning took over my life, not because I was a bridesmaid. Clara made sure to pick 6 perfect thin friends she barely knew, but because I was the only one who could handle logistics. I spent evenings building the elaborate floral stands she found on Pinterest, designing the complex seating chart which she constantly overruled, and even dealing with the caterer who was threatening to pull out over a payment dispute that Clara had ignored. I was essentially the unpaid, unappreciated wedding planner, and I did it because, deep down, I still craved that familial approval. I wanted her to look at me and finally, just once, say, "Thank you. I couldn't have done this without you." The one thing I refused to compromise on was the gift. I knew she had her eye on this specific, incredibly rare antique Baccarat wine decanter set from the 1920s. It was ridiculous, expensive, and utterly unnecessary, but I knew it was her dream item. I cashed in some stock I had been holding, spent nearly $2,000 on the set, and had it professionally cleaned and packaged. It was my peace offering, my way of saying, I love you, and despite everything, I want you to be happy. The wedding day arrived, sunny and beautiful. I got to the venue, a stunning vineyard, early to make sure everything was set up perfectly. The ceremony went off without a hitch. I watched from the back row, a quiet, almost invisible figure, and genuinely wished them well. Then came the reception. I saw the huge, elegant tent, the hundreds of twinkling fairy lights, and the long rows of beautifully set tables. I approached the seating chart, feeling a tiny flutter of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she'd put me at the family table, right next to our parents. I ran my finger down the list of names: mother, father, Mark's parents, Aunt Linda, cousin Tom, and then I saw my name scribbled in tiny, almost illegible handwriting at the bottom. It just said, my name Annex A. I had no idea what Annex A was, but the rest of the family was at table 1, the enormous circular table right in the center. I asked one of the venue coordinators where Annex A was. She looked uncomfortable, pointed past the tent entrance, and mumbled, just around the side. I walked around the side of the magnificent, glowing tent, and that's when I saw it. A single, cheap-looking plastic fold-out table with one chair, covered in a slightly stained linen, pushed right up against the service entrance. The air smelled strongly of stale cooking oil and decomposing food waste. And right next to the table, dominating the space, were 3 colossal, green commercial trash dumpsters, lids slightly ajar, buzzing with flies. My seat, my sister's way of telling me exactly where I ranked. I actually laughed. A hollow, choked sound. It was so absurd, so utterly calculated in its cruelty. As I stood there, staring at the horror of my seating arrangement, Clara walked out of the tent, holding her new husband's arm, radiating smug perfection. She looked directly at me, saw me standing by the trash, and that's when she delivered the line, "Guess you don't count," with that icy, triumphant smirk. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, but it wasn't the pain of being rejected. It was the pain of finally, truly realizing who she was and what my place in her life would always be. A convenience, an afterthought, and a punching bag. The $2.00 gift felt like a unweight in my hands. The years of sacrifice, the money I lent, the emotional labor I poured into her life, it all condensed into the beautiful, heavy box I was holding. So that's the situation I was in, standing next to 3 literal piles of garbage, witnessing my sister's utter contempt, with the one thing she truly coveted in my hands. I had poured every ounce of familial goodwill I had left into that moment, and she had responded by putting me out with the trash. I had to make a choice. I could be the bigger person, quietly suck it up, and stay to avoid a scene, thereby confirming to her and to myself that her contempt was acceptable. Or I could finally, definitively, and publicly draw a line in the sand. Before I tell you what happened next, and trust me, it's the part you've been waiting for, I want you to pause this video, go to the comments section right now, and tell me, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have stayed? Or would you have walked away and taken that incredible, expensive gift with you? Let me know. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, the ambient wedding music and happy chatter from inside the tent fading into a dull roar. The laughter of the guests felt miles away. My hands were shaking, not from anger, but from the incredible clarity that had suddenly washed over me. I wasn't just walking out of a wedding. I was walking out of a lifetime of being treated as less than. I looked at the beautiful, heavy gift box one last time, a symbol of the sisterly relationship I had desperately tried to preserve, and I realized it was the only piece of leverage I had left. I placed the box carefully on the plastic table, then leaned down and picked it up again. I took a deep breath, straightened my clothes, and walked, not away from the venue, but back towards the reception tent, towards the center of the action. Clara and Mark were just finishing their grand entrance, walking between the tables to applause. My parents were smiling proudly at table 1. I walked straight past the entrance, into the tent, and the music seemed to drop in volume as people noticed me. I didn't yell, I didn't cause a scene. I walked directly to table 1, right where my parents were raising their glasses. I placed the wine decanter set, a gift that was clearly worth a small fortune, right in the center of their table. The elaborate wrapping, the silk ribbon, the sheer size of the box drew every eye. Then I leaned down to my mother, who was beaming, and spoke in a clear, carrying voice, loud enough that everyone at the adjacent tables could hear, but low enough that it wasn't a shout. "Mom," I said, my voice steady, "I need to take a personal leave of absence from the family. I hope Clara and Mark have a wonderful life together. Tell them I'll be reclaiming my down payment savings next week. I expect the full amount with interest." I paused, then looked directly at Clara, who was now frozen halfway across the room, her perfect smile faltering as she realized something was wrong. "As for this gift," I continued, tapping the box, "it was meant for a sister who values me as a family member, not as a pile of trash to be hidden next to the dumpsters. Since my assigned seat was Annex A, next to the catering waste, I'm taking the gift back. It seems like a fitting exchange for the years of emotional garbage I've been given." With that, I calmly picked up the box, turned my back on the stunned room, and walked out. I didn't look back. I just kept walking past the astonished coordinator, past the now infamous Annex A, and out to my car. As I pulled away, I glanced in my rearview mirror. The elegant tent looked like a scene of chaos. I saw Clara, her expensive dress a blur, run out the entrance. She had gone completely pale, realizing what I had done, and more importantly, what I had taken. Her face contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage, and she started screaming. I couldn't make out the words, but the sheer volume and sound of her devastation were unmistakable. It was the sound of her perfect, expensive wedding being irrevocably tarnished by the one person she thought she could mistreat without consequence. I drove home and didn't check my phone for 24 hours. When I finally did, it was a torrent of texts. My parents were furious, calling me selfish, dramatic, and a host of other colorful things, but notably, they didn't try to defend the seating arrangement. Mark sent a simple, apologetic text saying he was so sorry and wished he had known. Clara, however, sent a series of increasingly frantic and unhinged messages that went from insults to desperate pleas for the gift back, claiming the embarrassment had ruined her wedding photos. The aftermath was swift. I stuck to my guns. I hired a lawyer the next day, not to sue, but to write a formal demand letter for the repayment of my condo money, complete with the detailed paper trail I had kept. Faced with a legal document and the clear threat of exposure, my parents were forced to sell some investments to repay me. They did it begrudgingly, but they did it. Clara and I haven't spoken since. She tried to frame me as the crazy sister to Mark's family, but enough guests had seen the Annex A setup and the way she treated me over the years that her story didn't stick. The silence is the best gift I've ever received. I finally have my condo, and I bought myself a much nicer, modern decanter set with a portion of my repaid savings. The entire experience was a painful, expensive lesson, but I finally realized that self-respect is non-negotiable, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from People who intentionally diminish you. I learned that family doesn't always mean unconditional love. Sometimes it just means proximity. Walking out of that tent with the gift in my hands was the moment I finally chose myself over the desperate need for their validation. So if you've ever felt invisible or unappreciated by the people who are supposed to care about you the most, remember that you have the right to reclaim your time, your worth, and yes, your incredibly expensive vintage glassware. Like this video if you were totally on my side when I took that gift back. And subscribe right now if you want to hear more stories of people finally standing up for themselves. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. I'll be reading every single one. I'll see you all in the next story.